Not the scream, the silence after it, is what tells you something has gone wrong. Your body has done its ancient work. The child is out. The room should soften. It doesn't. The first clinic of Vienna's General Hospital keeps its air thick, as if the walls are hoarding everyone's breath. Candlelight shivers along damp stone. Straw pricks through a sheet so thin it feels like a lie. The ceiling is high enough to make prayers sound small. You turn your head and find your baby. For one clean second, you believe the worst has already happened. You've survived the labor. You've crossed that border, and you're still here. Then footsteps measured, confident arrive like a verdict. A man in a dark coat, neat as a funeral, moves toward your bed. His apron is a constellation of old stains, worn like a decoration, like proof he belongs to the serious world. He does not hurry. He does not ask permission. He has the posture of someone raised to believe his presence is a cure all by itself. His hands come up, and you notice the detail that no one has taught you to fear yet. The darkness under his fingernails, not dirt from the street, not ink, something older, drier, something that clings. 10 minutes ago, he was downstairs, in the cold rooms where the dead are opened like books, in the underground quiet where bodies are lessons and the smell of endings has nowhere to go. Now he is here, above ground, where the living are supposed to be protected. He has not washed. Why would he? In 1847, a physician is a gentleman, and a gentleman's hands are clean, by definition clean, in the same way a title is clean, clean like a coat that never touches the floor. You try to pull back, but your muscles answer with a weakness that feels personal. The bed holds you like a hand itself. He leans in. Metal instruments click in a tray somewhere. Linen rustles. A student's boots scrape. Your baby makes a sound like a kitten in winter. Cold fingertips press into your abdomen routine. Efficient, almost bored. The touch is not intimate. It is administrative. A checkmark delivered through skin. A chill crawls up your spine anyway, instinctive and humiliating. Your body is telling you something your mind doesn't have vocabulary for. The doctor's mouth bends into a mild smile that says you are dramatic, that you are a woman, that you will be fine if you obey. He murmurs one word soft, almost kind. Normal. You want to believe him. You want desperately to believe him, because if it isn't normal, then the building has teeth. From the beds beside you come other sounds. Low crying, a throat working against fever, the restless whisper of someone who can no longer sleep. Those women heard the same word 2 days ago. The ward swallowed them anyway. You stare at the dark crescents under his nails and understand, without understanding, that you are being touched by two worlds at once. The warm, trembling world that has just produced a life, and the cold, disciplined world that handles death all morning and calls it education. No one told you the miracle doesn't end at birth. Here, it only changes costume. Because in this clinic, the sentence isn't spoken by a judge. It's carried under fingernails. Forget the hospital, you know. In 1847, hospital means stone that remembers every cough. Down these corridors, sound travels with a strange patience. Prayers slip through door cracks. A clatter of basins repeats like a ritual. The air holds sweat, old linen, and the sourness of too many bodies too close together. An odor that doesn't leave so much as it is politely ignored. Vienna outside is a city of carriages and winter breath, but inside the general hospital, the seasons don't matter. The ward is its own climate, damp, crowded, watchful. There are 2 maternity clinics here, separated by little more than a wall and a schedule. On paper, they are twins. In reality, one is a rumor women repeat like a spell to keep themselves alive. You can picture it because you lived it before you were admitted. The line of pregnant bodies waiting for assignment, the tightening belt of fear around every rib. Women do not trade baby names. They trade strategies. They count. They bargain with fate as if fate takes bribes. Second clinic, someone whispers, as though saying it aloud might summon it. The second clinic belongs to midwives. The first belongs to doctors and medical students. The first carries prestige, lectures, demonstrations, examinations performed with a flourish. It is supposed to be safer because it is more advanced, and yet it is the first clinic that mothers dread. A woman ahead of you is assigned to your side. She drops to her knees with the kind of speed you only see in emergencies. Her palms slap stone. She begs, not politely, not quietly. She begs like a person begging for air. Put her with the midwives. Let her be less technical. Let her live. No one answers her with mercy. The system does not do mercy. The system does lists. She is dragged away, and the sound of her pleading fades down the hall, leaving behind the worst kind of quiet. The quiet that tells you the ward has done this before and will do it again. The numbers aren't spoken aloud in official tones, but the women know them. They know that in the first clinic, the death rate can climb to something that feels like nearly 1 in 5. They know because they attend the funerals. They know because the streets have become part of the maternity plan. Some women give birth outside, on icy pavement, just so they can claim a street delivery and avoid being admitted to the physician's ward. Imagine that choice snow under your knees, breath stinging your throat, and still thinking, this is safer than their beds. Inside, the staff moves with a practiced indifference. Nurses' faces look made of ash. They change sheets quickly, as if speed is a substitute for cleanliness. When you ask what happened to the woman in the next bed, answers come too fast, too rehearsed. Bad air, miasma. Weak constitution, sometimes more cruelly, nervous temperament, as if your body is dying because your morals are poor. It's a comforting story for them. If the air is to blame, then no one's hands are guilty. If women are weak, then the institution remains holy. But your eyes keep catching on the contradiction. If it were Vienna's air, it would not choose a clinic by name. If it were fate, it wouldn't respect a wall. A pattern is living here, a pattern that moves with authority. And you, bleeding, exhausted, euphoric, and terrified, have been placed exactly where that pattern feeds. The ward feels less like a sanctuary now, and more like a machine that runs on routine, a machine that doesn't hate you. It doesn't need to. It simply doesn't see you as fully human anymore, just a body that must be managed, measured, discharged, or replaced. Somewhere a door opens, metal scrapes, a basin sloshes. The next physician who steps inside won't just bring knowledge. He'll bring whatever the hospital has been carrying between rooms. By the third day, the world shrinks into your skin. Walls don't move, but you feel them pressing inward. The air you breathe seems already used by someone else. Candlelight turns sickly, yellow, and uncertain, as if even fire is tired. The cries of infants down the corridor come muffled, as though you are listening from underwater. Your mouth dries first. Swallowing becomes a slow abrasion, like dragging cloth over raw wood. Your tongue feels too big, too heavy, as if it doesn't belong to you. Heat gathers in your chest, climbs your throat, settles behind your eyes, until your thoughts begin to slip like wet thread through fingers. You reach for your baby. Your arm answers with lead. You try again. Your shoulder trembles, then gives up. The betrayal is immediate and intimate. Your own body, which made life, now refuses to lift a hand toward it. A shiver cuts through the fever, sharp enough to make your teeth click. Sweat follows, cold and sour, pooling in your hairline, tracing your temples. The sheet clings. You turn your head and the room tilts slowly, deliberately, like the hospital is deciding whether you deserve balance. Then comes the darker thought, uninvited. What if you aren't only the victim? What if you're becoming the threat? In a place where women vanish into coffins so quickly, the bed barely cools, sickness feels like a moral accusation. You feel your pulse racing and begin to imagine it isn't just recovery, it's pursuit. Something inside you is chasing something else inside you, and you can't see either one. Footsteps return. The doctor approaches again, and you want to grab him by the sleeve to force him to witness what is happening. But he doesn't speak to you. He speaks over you to a nurse, to a student, to the air. His voice is calm, administrative. He lifts the blanket with the casual certainty of a man checking inventory. Fingers press into your abdomen. You flinch. He doesn't apologize. He watches your face the way one watches a clock. You try to explain your fever is wrong. Your chills are not ordinary. The pain feels like it has edges. Your words arrive warped. You can hear yourself sounding confused, and that frightens you more than the pain, because confusion is the easiest symptom for them to dismiss. He is not alarmed. He is impatient. Women exaggerate, he implies. Women are hysterical. Women are dramatic after birth. The room is warm. Your mind is tired. He offers the oldest, deadliest comfort in medicine. It's normal. Normal becomes a lid pressed firmly onto your panic. Normal becomes a way to end the conversation without admitting responsibility. Normal becomes the institution's favorite prayer. He prescribes rest, as if rest could negotiate with an invisible rot. He turns away and moves to the next bed with a brisk, self-satisfied efficiency, leaving you burning quietly in your own sheets. And now the fear changes shape. It is no longer simply fear of dying. It is fear of dying while everyone keeps insisting you aren't. So here's the question that crawls into the viewer's mind like a cold hand. If you were on that mattress, hearing the doctor call your agony normal, would you trust him or your own instincts? In the corner of this ward, a different kind of attention exists. Not pity, not romance, not the soft sympathy people offer when they have nothing else. This attention is sharper. It watches. It compares. It refuses to accept the hospital's convenient bedtime stories. Ignaz Semmelweis moves through the first clinic like a man listening for a hidden clock. While other doctors drift from bed to bed with the lazy confidence of tradition, he pauses. He looks. He lingers just long enough to make people uncomfortable. His face is not heroic. It is restless. The face of someone who has been losing an argument with reality and can't stop trying to win. He carries paper. He carries numbers. He carries the embarrassment of caring too much. Instead of blaming bad air, he does something scandalous. He compares the two clinics. He turns gossip into data. He treats rumor as a clue rather than a superstition. He asks questions no one wants asked, not because they are difficult, but because they are humiliating. Who examined her at dawn? Which student performed the internal check? Where were their hands an hour earlier? You see him stop near a bed, not to perform an act of comfort, but to observe the choreography. He watches students approach, watch them handle instruments, watch them wipe a blade on cloth with a gesture that looks clean but isn't. He notices the way everyone moves quickly, as if speed itself is proof of competence. Then his gaze shifts to hands. Hands, in this world, are symbols. Hands deliver babies. Hands deliver lectures. Hands sign papers and carry authority. You have been taught to respect them the way you respect law. Semmelweis watches those hands with a kind of quiet horror. Because the first clinic is a teaching clinic, its mornings belong to death. Doctors and students descend to the autopsy rooms below, where the air is colder and the smell is unmistakable, the sweet metal tang of what has ended. They open bodies with clinical reverence, learning anatomy by dismantling it. They come up afterward with the same coats, the same certainty, and the same hands. And then they walk straight into the maternity ward. No deep washing, no true cleansing. At best, A quick rinse in a basin that has already seen too much that day. Water that has held blood now pretends to be purification. You see a student step toward the woman beside you. He has the underground smell on him, not always obvious, not always dramatic, but present if you know how to notice. His fingers reach out with the easy entitlement of someone trained to touch without asking. Semmelweis watches from a distance, and something hardens behind his eyes. The connection is almost insulting in its simplicity. The bridge between the dead and the living is not a corridor. It is a habit. It is the daily routine of men who do not believe they can be dirty. The first clinic is not merely failing to protect mothers. It may be delivering their doom. And Semmelweis understands what that means, with the sinking clarity of a man realizing the enemy is not outside the walls. The enemy is woven into the institution's pride. To say it aloud would be war. To prove it would be worse. Suspicion is a whisper. Proof is a scream. Semmelweis's obsession doesn't resolve into a clever lecture or a polished paper. It detonates in something more brutal. The suffering of a colleague. Jakob Kolechka, another doctor, another man of science, is injured during an autopsy. A small cut. A minor incident. The kind of wound men dismiss with a shrug in a building where death is routine and pain is considered educational. But then the familiar horror begins. It starts with fever. The kind that climbs fast, that turns the skin slick and the eyes glassy. Then chills violent enough to make the body look possessed. And pain that changes a face, stripping away composure and leaving behind raw panic. Semmelweis watches him, and the recognition is immediate and devastating. He has seen this progression hundreds of times, not in doctors, in mothers. The pieces click into place with the weight of a coffin lid. If a healthy man can collapse like a postpartum woman after a cut exposed to cadaver matter, then childbed fever is not divine punishment and not weather and not moral weakness. It is contamination. It is something carried, something transferred, something delivered through touch. And suddenly your memory of the doctor's nails becomes unbearable. Those dark crescents aren't just unpleasant. They are evidence. The first clinic's prestige becomes its weapon. Its superior education becomes a pipeline. Hands move from corpses to fresh wounds, from the dead to the newly delivered, from autopsy tables to birthing beds, without a moment of true interruption. The hospital has built a flawless distribution system for invisible ruin, and it runs on the assumption that gentlemen cannot be unclean. You lie there, fevered, hearing footsteps, and the world changes. You no longer see the doctor as a savior with instruments. You see him as a carrier and elegant courier of disaster. Every examination now feels like Russian roulette with your life. Every professional touch becomes a gamble. The ward's indifference is no longer simply cold. It is complicit. Semmelweis stands in the middle of it all, understanding that his discovery is not just scientific, it is accusatory. It doesn't flatter anyone, it indicts them. And the most terrifying part is how small the solution might be, because small solutions demand the hardest thing in any hierarchy. Humility, no debate, no polite committee. Semmelweis moves like a man trying to outrun the funeral carts. He introduces a new ritual in the first clinic, and it is not complicated enough to impress anyone, which is precisely why it offends them. Before touching a mother, every doctor and student must wash their hands in a harsh chlorinated solution. Not perfumed soap, not a gentleman's rinse. Chlorine, a chemical bite that doesn't ask permission, a sting that reddens skin. A smell that cuts through the ward like winter air through a cracked window. It doesn't whisper. It announces itself. You sense the change before you see it. The sharp scent reaches your bed and makes your eyes water. It sits over the usual stew of sweat and linen like a cold blade laid across a warm throat. For the first time, that harshness feels strangely like safety. A basin is set near the entry. Metal clinks. The solution sloshes. You watch hands go in. Fingers scrub. Nails are worked at. Palms are rubbed until skin goes pink, then raw. The doctor's jaw tightens while he does it, as if the act is beneath him. He dries his hands with a rough towel that scratches, and he looks less relieved than insulted. Because this ritual does not merely clean, it implies guilt. To wash like this is to admit that your hands can harm. To admit that your status doesn't sterilize you. To admit that your education has been a weapon pointed at mothers. The results arrive like a slap. Death drops. Beds stop emptying at the same rhythm. The fever loses its stranglehold. Women begin to leave alive more often than not. It should be a triumph. Instead, it becomes an outrage. In corridors, you hear mutters. The smell is unbearable. The solution is cruel. The skin burns. They call Semmelweis obsessive. They call him unhinged. They call his invisible contamination a superstition dressed in numbers. They don't talk like men who have been corrected. They talk like men who have been humiliated. A doctor forced to scrub his hands feels, in that moment, like a criminal being made to erase evidence. And for many of them, that emotional truth matters more than the living proof in the ward. Commente chlorine. If you think the hardest thing for a powerful system to swallow isn't a complex cure, it's a simple one that exposes their arrogance. And if you're the kind of viewer who keeps watching when the story gets uglier, when the cure is found, and the real horror becomes the people, then stay close. If you want the history time tried to bury, subscribe. The shadows only deepen from here. Numbers don't always win. In 1847, they often lose to pride. You would assume the hospital would celebrate Semmelweis. You would assume the sudden drop in mortality would turn skeptics into believers. But the medical world you are watching is not driven purely by evidence. It is driven by hierarchy, by reputations polished over decades, by professors who cannot afford to be wrong, by the fragile idea that a gentleman's authority is a kind of cleanliness. Semmelweis didn't just bring a solution. He brought a mirror. And when the senior men of Vienna glance into it, they don't see saviors. They see hands that have been dangerous for years. They see careers built on routines that killed mothers. They see a crime that wasn't committed with malice, but with certainty, and certainty is the hardest stain to admit. So the institution does what institutions do when confronted with shame. It closes ranks. They laugh at the notion of invisible contamination. They retreat to theories that flatter them weather. Atmospheric changes, women's constitutions, fate. Any explanation that doesn't require the unbearable sentence, "We did this." Semmelweis is undermined with an efficiency that feels surgical. His ideas are mocked in lectures. His authority is reduced. His methods are treated like insults rather than innovations. He is made to look frantic, unreasonable, an inconvenient man with inconvenient results. Then comes the ugliest move. The ritual is abandoned. One day the basin is there. The next day it is not. The chlorine smell fades. The ward returns to its old odor linen, sweat, and something faintly sweet that makes your stomach tighten, because your body has learned what it means. Students go downstairs again. They return upstairs again. They touch mothers again, unwashed. As you prepare to leave, if you live long enough to leave, you watch a new woman being placed into the bed that almost became your coffin. Her face holds that same exhausted hope you once wore. She doesn't know the building's secret. She doesn't know to look at hands first. You want to warn her. You want to shout until your throat tears. Don't let them touch you. But the system is louder than any single woman. A doctor approaches her with the calm confidence of tradition, and you realize the truth has been buried alive, not because it wasn't real, but because it was too humiliating. The hospital becomes a trap again, not because it lacks knowledge, because it cannot tolerate accountability. After you leave the iron gates of Vienna's General Hospital, The street air feels almost violent, cold, clean, alive. It fills your lungs like permission. It should feel like freedom. And yet, you carry something heavier than the memory of pain. You carry the memory of certainty. The doctor's voice. His calm dismissal. His word normal used like a curtain drawn over your terror. The way the institution protected itself with language, with theories, with authority, while women burned from the inside and were called dramatic for noticing. This is why the story still lands like modern horror. It doesn't require monsters. It requires habits. It requires a system built by humans who prefer their pride intact over their patients alive. Semmelweis proved something that should have been celebrated instantly. A small act washing hands properly could sever a chain of death. But small acts threaten big egos. They expose the possibility that suffering wasn't inevitable, that tragedy wasn't fate, that the building wasn't haunted by miasma only by arrogance. And if a system can deny something that obvious, something so measurable, something so close to the skin, what else can it deny when denial is more comfortable than confession? So the final image isn't the autopsy room. It isn't even the maternity ward. It's your own hands. Because now you know what hands can carry. You know what authority can hide. You know how easily professional becomes a costume. When you walk toward any hospital then or now, what are you really walking toward? A sanctuary, or a threat that refuses to admit its own shadow? Trust or fear? Choose one in the comments.